The room erupted with applause the moment my father placed the small set of keys on the table. My younger sister Madison stared at them as if she had just won the lottery. The oceanfront beach house had been part of our family for decades. It sat on a stretch of pristine coastline with private beach access, breathtaking views, and a value that had climbed well into the millions. As everyone around us celebrated, Madison looked like she was floating on air while our relatives showered her with praise and admiration. Mom reached across the table and squeezed her hand with tears shining in her eyes. She told Madison how proud she was for finishing her MBA, and how much she deserved such an incredible reward. Madison picked up the keys carefully and smiled at the crowd. She said she still could not believe the beach house was finally hers. Dad quickly added that technically the property remained under a family trust, but Madison would have exclusive rights to use it and treat it as her own. The explanation barely mattered. To everyone sitting there, the message was simple. Madison had just been handed a dream property. My younger brother, Tyler, raised his coffee mug and joked about Madison having both a fancy degree and a fancy beach house. Everyone laughed and joined the toast. I lifted my water glass politely and smiled. I had no intention of ruining the moment, not yet. 7 years earlier, I had earned a finance degree while working nearly full-time. I graduated near the top of my class and entered the investment industry with nothing but determination and student loans. My celebration had been a simple dinner and a small check. Meanwhile, Madison had attended an expensive private university funded entirely by our parents. Now she was receiving a multi-million-dollar property as a graduation present. Dad explained that the situations were different. Madison planned to work inside the family real estate business, and according to him, the beach house would be useful for entertaining clients and hosting networking events. He called it a strategic investment in her future. Madison immediately began talking about renovations. She wanted a modern kitchen, expanded outdoor space, and luxury furnishings. Mom eagerly promised that a renovation budget had already been set aside to make the house match Madison's vision. While everyone discussed furniture and party plans, I quietly glanced at my phone beneath the table. The clock showed 11:47 in the morning. 13 minutes remained. 13 minutes until a process that had been years in the making finally became official. I nearly laughed at the irony. I had balanced work and school simultaneously while building my own career from scratch. Madison had enjoyed every advantage imaginable and still landed a job directly through our father, but I simply nodded and wished her well. The conversation shifted toward plans for a housewarming celebration. Mom wanted a family gathering with food and beach games. Madison announced that she had already hired professional movers because she was not comfortable trusting family members with expensive furniture. Everyone chuckled as she described how she intended to transform the property into her personal showcase. Then Dad received a phone call. At first, nobody paid much attention. He stepped outside onto the terrace overlooking the golf course and answered it. A few moments later, however, his body language changed. He began pacing, his expression darkened. Confusion quickly turned into concern. My phone buzzed again. The message came from my attorney. Trust activation complete. All assets successfully transferred according to governing documents. I looked at the clock. Noon, exactly on schedule. When Dad returned to the table, the color had drained from his face. He looked directly at me and said he needed to speak with me privately. The entire table fell silent. Curious eyes followed us as we moved toward a quiet corner of the dining room. Dad immediately showed me an email on his phone. It was from the trust administrator. The message explained that the family trust had officially activated and that authority over all trust assets had transferred to a primary beneficiary. According to the email, that beneficiary was me. He stared at me in disbelief and demanded an explanation. I calmly reminded him about the trust our grandparents created before they passed away. The trust controlled not only the beach house but also a mountain retreat and several valuable commercial properties. My grandparents had established specific conditions decades earlier. Those conditions stated that when the oldest grandchild reached the age of 30, full management authority would transfer to that individual. I had turned 30 1 month earlier. Dad looked stunned. He asked how I even knew such details existed. I explained that my grandmother had prepared for this long ago. Before she died, she gave me a series of sealed letters. Each one was intended to be opened at a specific age. Those letters explained the responsibilities she expected me to carry and the future roles she wanted me to play. The realization slowly settled across his face. The beach house was not his to give away. It never had been. When we returned to the table, everyone immediately sensed something was wrong. Questions started flying. Dad hesitated before finally admitting there was a complication involving the property. I opened the trust documents on my phone and explained everything. The room became silent. Madison laughed at first because she assumed it had to be some misunderstanding. But the laughter disappeared when I showed everyone the legal paperwork. The beach house, the mountain cabin, and multiple income-producing properties were all protected under the trust. As of that afternoon, I had become the trustee responsible for managing them. Madison demanded that I simply transfer ownership to her anyway. She argued that since I now controlled everything, I could easily change the outcome. I explained that the trust was designed specifically to prevent emotional decisions and impulsive giveaways. My authority came with strict responsibilities, not unlimited freedom. The anger in her eyes grew stronger with every word. She accused me of keeping everything for myself. I explained that I was managing the assets, not owning them outright. The properties generated substantial income that remained inside the trust to preserve and grow the family legacy. They were meant to benefit multiple generations, not satisfy one person's immediate desires. As more relatives reviewed the documents, the truth became impossible to ignore. The trust had grown enormously over the years through appreciation and careful management. What had once been worth around $12 million had expanded into an empire approaching $18 million. Madison was furious. Dad was humiliated. Mom looked completely shocked. Then I revealed something that made the situation even harder for them to accept. 3 months earlier, I had warned Dad. I had emailed him details about the upcoming activation and advised him to review the trust documents before making promises involving trust assets. He admitted in front of everyone that he had ignored the message because he assumed it was some kind of scam. The entire table stared at him. For the first time all afternoon, nobody blamed me. Madison eventually stood up and stormed out of the restaurant. Mom followed shortly afterward. The celebration was over. The remaining relatives began asking practical questions. Could they still use the properties? Would family access disappear? I reassured them that nothing was changing except accountability. Family members could still enjoy the homes under the same guidelines intended by our grandparents. Reservations would go through property management. Fees would be fair, rules would be enforced. Exactly as my grandparents had intended. Later that evening, after the dust settled, Dad called me. His attorney had reviewed everything and confirmed that the trust was legally airtight. There was nothing he could do to challenge it. His voice sounded different than usual. The arrogance was gone. He admitted that he had always viewed me as the daughter who received a small graduation check while Madison received the spotlight. He confessed that he never imagined my grandparents had trusted me with something so significant. I told him the truth. They loved him deeply, but they also understood him. They knew he made decisions based on emotion and impulse. They wanted someone who would protect what they had spent a lifetime building. Before ending the call, Dad asked one final question. He wanted to know what my grandmother's last letter had said. I closed my eyes and remembered every word. She wrote that family members would pressure me. She warned that guilt would be used as a weapon. She said there would be moments when standing firm would feel lonely. But she reminded me that protecting a legacy sometimes required disappointing people. Most importantly, she told me never to forget why she chose me. That night, I sat alone in the townhouse I had purchased with my own hard-earned money. I reread her final letter and smiled. Madison never got the beach house. I never wanted the beach house. What I inherited was something much bigger. I inherited responsibility. I inherited trust. I inherited an empire built by two people who believed I would protect it when nobody else could. And deep down,